calculated, and I calculated the salaries based on a 2.23% increase. Insurance was calculated on a 6% increase, but that number can change because I really don't know what the new renewal rates will be. Insurance, I increased at a 3% increase for like our property insurance. I will get a better number of what that increase or what will happen with that in the middle of March. And then any other colors, like the pink, there are worksheets that the departments were asked to go in, and for this particular department, there is no users fees that they're going to be doing, but basically they're to identify, describe what the item is, cost, contract services, what it is, and justify it, and then put in what is the fiscal year amount that's for that item. And if it's going to continue on year over year, that they put those numbers in, because sometimes it might be just 1 year and we don't have that continued cost, or it's every other year or every 3 years. And what I want to try to do is build out a 5-year forecast, but I just don't want to add 3% onto what we're doing now and assume that's what it is. Anything that did not have a color in, they could just enter in. Like, this is one of those odd ones that, yes, it's over 5,000, but it's very specific for the attorney. And you can see that that cost has gone up year over year. We're relying more on the attorney, so that if you looked at the previous years, I'll unhide these again. The attorney costs have increased significantly. And we also try to put the attorney costs based on what departments it's affecting. So it doesn't fall all on administration, but the majority of it does. So, and then the other lower items, they could just put in the number based on history or what we normally do, because that's lower. And then memberships and dues, that feeds in from this sheet. This one is just a contingency. Part of it is employee appreciation and holiday party used to be in administration. Now it's in HR. So those are not listed here. But then they list their dues and memberships, what it's for, what the cost will be. And then the travel actually feeds in from this sheet, which we're asking them to list, well, what travel trainings that you're planning to do, what's the cost of the registration, what's the cost of the actual travel for lodging and airfare, whatever it is, so that we can identify, be more precise on these costs. And then lastly, we did small capital, because we're doing a capital plan, but I'm only looking at to put those items that are over 20,000 on the CPI. Anything under 20,000, it was asked for them to list them here. And again, these feed over into these accounts. These are actually new accounts that will be set up for a small cap. Since we have the capital outlay, all these items under 20,000 will be under this new account category or subcategory of small capital. So this particular budget for the administration, I do have Heritage Green in it, but I'm not calculating that, and that is a cost that we have no control, but it is the special taxes that cover it. So that's kind of separate. So I've changed the capital to small capital to identify those areas. So the operating actually in this budget is increasing 4%, 20,890. Their target, they are over their target by 20,000. And if you look at that, the place that that's coming from is the attorney fees.
So when you look at the attorney fees, they've been allocated 75,000 for FY25, but to date, they've expended 8,600. Is that end of fiscal year? A lot of fees coming in?
That's only for July. I have reached out to the attorney and asked him to send me the bill through January. He did send it to me earlier this week, but I have not had a time to allocate it. I can tell you that cost is around 80,000 right now. However, I have not allocated out to the different departments, so I don't know how much exactly will go into administration, but I will tell you the majority of it will.
Is there a reason that it's so much more?
We're utilizing now, the attorney is going over every contract where departments are not, so previously departments would be able to enter into a contract, sign it, and nobody would know about it. So now all contracts have to be signed by the town manager, which is being reviewed by the attorney. So we have been utilizing that service a lot more than we previously did.
So the attorney's contract,
Um,
or
We,
it's not staff, right?
no,
Okay.
no, they're not staff, no, no. Um,
So I think in your early part of your discussion, you talked about what you had pulled out. So I'm having trouble comparing the target with the uncolored totals, line 83. You see what I mean? You have a total of proposed 1963717,
yes.
but our target is 598.
So really what you want to talk about is this
items in
line
color?
item, the operating. So the target is to keep this operating amount to the 577,975.
65,
Yeah.
line 65.
So, and then when I compared that, which I have down here, to what the target is, that's how much we are over target. And if you look at the actual line items, you can see that it's the attorney's fees that are really affecting the reason why we're over the target. These other numbers here, again, I took out anything that's one time. So small cap we're considering as one time. Debt service isn't in this, and that is offset by, that full debt service is offset by the special taxing. And the transfers are part of that debt service as well, which is supported by the special taxing.
So before this meeting, I had two questions. And so you mentioned debt service. Can you look at line 57? Would that be our debt service interest bonds? I noticed a very significant increase there. And
Yes,
Is that
so,
offset by, is that heritage and offset by heritage?
so that is in the documents. I pulled that number from the documents that we have that are repayment schedule. So the first year, we're pretty much paying or the first 2 years up through FY27, we're paying just interest. And all that interest is supported by the special taxes.
Okay, and my other question was, and you've touched on it already, line item 23, the attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I understand now that the attorney is looking at every contract, that's definitely going to have the cost go up. But I'm always cautious when I see a nice round figure, like 100,000. I mean, is there any way that we can put more clarity on how we got to that number?
I put that just based on the increases. So I actually put that number in knowing what the invoice was sent to me. But again, I haven't allocated out, so I really don't know. I know most of it's going to be 160, but just looking at historic. So if we look at the historic for the attorney fees, last year, FY24, we were at 101. We budgeted 75 this year, but I know there are some things that special projects that the attorney's working on, which is like the negotiation on the water agreement. There's some stormwater issues that they're working on. So I know that that's going to increase. And because this was that amount, we budgeted 75, and I know the bill that just came in was for 80,000. I assumed we're going to continue that trend. But it could change depending on who our town manager is.
So your 23P, that's fiscal 25 entered as of the 7th.
Yes, that's
That's
entered. If I don't have the information, it's not entered. That's why I put that there.
okay.
Yeah, I don't,
Because we're beyond half of the fiscal year already, right?
yes, we're
The
beyond.
number should be a lot.
Yeah. So I did update, I ran a report on Saturday because we just did an AP packet to update all these numbers based on that date. But if I don't have that information in the system, I can't update it. And that was one of the things that I didn't have the attorney. I knew it was missing, but I didn't have that at that time. So right now our accountant is working on to allocate that cost so that we can enter that in.
Do you go out to bid for the attorney?
I think we changed attorneys, I want to say 6 years ago, we changed attorneys and we looked at the experience they had with municipalities. And that was a reason for the change, is this attorney had more experience working with municipal governments than the prior attorney that we
So
had.
are they charging you by the hour? Or-
Yes.
So there's no agreement in place to take care of this for the town?
Yeah, it's by the hour. It's $200 an hour.
Are they local?
They used to be, but he moved to Florida now. So at the time we engaged in the service, they were here, but has moved down to Florida since then.
So we went from actual in 22, from 22,000 to actual in 23 to 40,500 to 24 to 101,000.
Yes.
And that's fundamentally because we now have them looking at every contract.
Mhm.
So
Well,
that would be regardless of what lawyer we have.
Mhm.
yeah, and there's other projects that I know that they're working on. Again, I'm not a privileged to everything. I know that the contracts were the biggest thing because departments were signing contracts and I didn't know about it, nor did the town manager know about it.
But I would piggyback on something that Karen just mentioned. I wonder if we could revisit our contract with the attorney to see if there could be some overall fixed cost.
Okay.
Or not to exceed or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
If they've been at us for 6 years, they certainly have a good record of what they're doing for us and how that's increased based on our change in looking at the contracts. But it'd be far easier from a budgeting standpoint if you could have some not to exceed number.
Mm-hmm.
I
It is
do
concerning that-
remember from years ago, it really was all over the place from year to year, depending on what was going on.
Yeah, and that's definitely gonna be
And it's
a
hard,
struggle. I can understand that.
yeah.
And the other thing is we used to have all the attorney costs in one kind of department, but then we decided to start separating it out and put the expense to the department that the attorney is doing the advising or the work on.
Well, that makes sense, but it's still only one attorney, right?
Yes,
So that's
still
just a
only
matter
one
of,
attorney.
so
when it comes to
it
code or something
also
like
may make sense to look at what are the total attorney costs. And I mean, you're getting towards the point if you're spending potentially 100,000 in this department and who knows how much in another department where it'd make more sense to bring somebody in-house,
Yeah.
even on a part-time basis or something like that. Also on the contracting thing, I don't know that it makes sense to have them review every single contract. It seems like controls could be put in place for a certain threshold, you know, but other controls are in place to make sure that you're aware of, you know, what's going on. Like 2 signatures, you have to sign off and they have to sign off, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, does it make sense to spend, you know, $200 for an attorney to review a $5,000 contract?
Yes, and I think that probably is a good approach once we kind of get a handle on getting a process in place. The thing is that there were contracts that we probably should not have entered into, but as we learn what we should be looking for, that is something we could look at not having every contract reviewed. Absolutely.
And then I guess my other question related to this attorney is this is the same attorney that's handling the water challenges with the county?
Yes, he's involved in it. Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just think this is, and it sounds like maybe the group is in agreement, something that needs to be revisited, because I would also say that if we're trying to move something that important forward, that it's better to have some sort of presence to put pressure. I mean, it's easy to sit in Florida and for somebody to kind of push them off. I just think for that particular thing and what a road stopper it is for the town to continue to progress, that's like an in-person, you know, putting pressure on them, actively negotiating with them rather than sitting somewhere off in another state.
Yes.
Did the attorney move to Florida or retire to Florida?
I'm not sure. I'll have to,
So what is the town's stand on trying to use local vendors and different things like that? As opposed to somebody who's not even in state.
that is, so in our procurement policy, there is an emphasis on using vendors and contractors within the town. And one of the things that was talked about in there is as long as the cost was reasonable, not a huge increase, say like they might be 3% more than what another contract would be, but because they were in town, they would be more favorable in getting that contract. So that is something that, and that's one of the things I try to talk with department heads. I know they have their favorite contractors and vendors that they use, but you need to expand and allow other companies to be able to bid or have put in a quote for the projects that we have.
So did you say that this attorney has been in place for 6 years?
I think so. Don't
Okay.
quote me on that.
That's certainly,
It's been a while.
that's certainly timely to consider maybe rebidding and then considering local. And a few years ago, when I was on the planning commission, I would often hear reference to the town attorney. Is this one and the same? For some reason, I was thinking we had a staff attorney.
No, never, well, I shouldn't say never. In my
Not an
time around here, right, but it was in Annapolis when I was around, on either on the council or in Karina's job. It was an Annapolis firm with a particular attorney assigned to us, but they kind of specialized, I thought, in municipal.
Yeah, I'm not really sure the reason. I was not part of that, but
Okay.
I can get more detail on that.
Cause
But
I
you
know,
did say that these people had municipal experience.
Yes.
That's certainly a valuable criteria.
I would also say that you might want to consider two different attorneys. Contract law, I mean, contract law is very different than like trying to push forward the negotiations that you're trying to push forward with Charles County. I mean, depending on, I don't know how all these costs are allocated and how it shakes off, but you know, contract law is different than the type of attorney, in my opinion, that you need to push those other challenges forward.
So if we want to make a recommendation like that, what's the process for that?
Well, I'm gonna bring it to the town manager.
Take care of that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That's why I'm trying.
Yeah.
Typing these recommendations.
And where's the threshold on what you bring to the town manager? Meaning it would also have to go to the council.
Well, if we were to go out to, put out for a town attorney, that would probably have to go to the, well, yeah, I think it would have to go to the town council.
So it sounds like, sort of Karen's question, we're making a recommendation to revisit perhaps a new attorney or the way we get one.
Yeah,
And you're gonna have that conversation with the town manager.
correct.
It could develop into a new contract, which would involve the council.
Yes, yes.
And also, I like what Nicole says about potentially having two, because contract law, when it's repetitive, shouldn't be 200 something.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. That's pretty easy. Like, but on the other hand, if I need a bulldog to try to move something forward, those are two distinct personalities as well. And I need someone here to do that versus contract law. Yeah, I could see that being remote. That's just, it's kind of a check the box exercise.
All right.
And it sounds like the town is either working on or needs a formal contract process.
Yeah, we do. And it's gotten better. So now contracts, actually anything that's a contract will come to finance first for review, then it goes to the attorney, then it goes to the town manager. Yeah.
We're thinking along similar lines. I told you earlier, I had two comments. I actually have a third.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's really not related to the budgeting, but something about me reading all these caused me to ask the question, do our staffs get regular performance reviews?
We used to. There has not been one, there has not been one since the town did the comp study because there has not been a merit increase since then. Each department, I guess, I mean, I had one recently. The finance staff has had one informally done because I expect to do a formal one in the spring, summertime. Kind of to set a baseline for everybody. But as far as is there a formal employee review, I can tell you that there hasn't been one since that comp study was implemented.
Karen's comment reminded me of that note because, we should have a process in
Mhm.
place for contracting, and we should have a process in place for, doing the performance reviews to make sure that we're getting the best out of our talent.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. And again, it used to be tied to a merit. The merit hasn't, so it hasn't been enforced. And I'm not sure if other departments are doing an informal one like the finance department has. But I know that I did receive one, but that was, the purpose of it was to set a baseline for the new town manager to come in.
And who did your,
The mayor and the assistant town manager.
is that managed by human resources?
Not when it's the department directors.
Hmm.
No, that was handled by the mayor / interim town manager. The others, I would think the HR would be involved in.
Mhm.
I did not involve HR when I did my informal reviews, but that again, with everything that was going on, I wanted to set an expectation and then revisit those and do a formal employee evaluation 9 months, 6 months, 9 months later.
So the staff are getting an automatic increase annually, or
A COLA.
they're getting a COLA?
Yes, a COLA. That's since FY 23, they've only gotten a COLA. Well, FY 23, that's when that study, that 65 percentile went into place. Since then, the last 2 budget years, it's only been a COLA.
So I looked at some of your other tabs on the bottom under training and travel.
Hmm.
When I look at that, I understand it's a work in progress, but is there the expectation that our staff get regular ongoing training every year?
It would be up to the department to put that in the budget and identify it. I mean, finance, I've established that I'm requiring at least all staff do 3 trainings and professional staff do 5 trainings.
I think it's a good idea.
So
Public Works have regulatory requirements for
Yes.
their training.
Mhm.
I understand the targeting concept. But there is a balance between targeting and control of cost. So earlier on, you said you omitted the overtime in the base cost.
Mhm.
To me, I think that should be part of the manager's control. And that should be part of their base cost.
And I'm going to tell you why I did that.
Okay.
Because I think overtime is out of control and nobody's managing it. I wanted them to really think about what they need the overtime for, what was the circumstances for that overtime. You gotta bear in mind, none of these departments have been asked to evaluate their costs and understand, okay, or plan out what's happening. And now I'm asking, I would like you to tell me what your plan is so that as the year goes through, I can see what you planned and what's actually happening. And that was the reason, because those costs are out of control, that I wanted them to think about. Now, this doesn't mean that target, they have to stick to it, because there's some one-time costs in there that is not in that target. And after I did that target based on the revenue that I calculated, which can change once I get the report from the county, which I should get sometime next week. But it left us with, I want to say like 138,000 to do with, for those other costs that are non-recurring, or establish what overtime we really need to look at.
But then the issue comes with accountability. If a manager does not see the effects of overtime, for the whole town, it's like out of sight, out of mind. So they'll just keep on submitting their overtime, and that will lead to out of control.
Yeah.
But if you let them see that on a monthly basis, they'll say, oh, wait a minute, why is it so high? It's affecting my other line items. That is something that I think we should consider.
No, we definitely, I mean, we have the reporting ability. The thing is, a lot of these departments, I'm trying to put this a nice way. They don't look at what's really happening. They figure we always do a budget adjustment or there's some excuse, and I want them to look at what's actually happening. And the other thing I've communicated to departments, we're not looking at the department budget amount, not your bottom line for your department. I'm looking at how you're managing each category and stay within the budget of each category, which is also why I wanted them to give more detail on what their plans are. But overtime has gone, and particularly in the police department, is enormous. That overtime, if you look year over year, it just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. And I'm wanting them to identify where's the issue. How are you going to mitigate that issue? What are you going to change? How are you going to change your schedule? What are you going to do to help mitigate that? But if we keep allowing them to put in 220,000 every year for overtime, when 5 years ago it was like maybe 60 or 70,000, then we're not accomplishing anything. And that was the reason why I wanted to eliminate that. I'm not saying they can't put it in, but make them think about it as they put in everything that they need.
So one of the ways they can think about it is say, we have enough overtime that it warrants increasing base staff. When do we go through that kind of discussion?
Well, we increased their staff in, so during this comp study, they got 5 new hires. And then they asked for 2 more in FY 23's budget or
And
FY 24 budget.
decline?
And every single time, overtime just continues to climb. So that was not the solution. And really what I'm asking departments is, again, to think about it, plan out. And again, they have not been asked to do this. It was just put the amount that you want on the line item, and that's how it went.
Biggest users of overtime, I presume, of police and public work.
Yes, Public Works, most of their overtime is in the enterprise funds for like water main breaks, sewer backups, those type of things.
3 snowfalls in 2 weeks.
Yeah, storm too. But with the police, it's harder to identify on what's the overtime. Now, I did do a rough run report and I saw that there was almost a third of the overtime was for training. So, and that was just looking at the total over the last year and looking at the total of overtime hours. So that would be a discussion. Okay, why do we have so much in overtime and training? How are you doing the schedule that these are hours are being in training? Why can't you adjust the schedule or something to make sure that the trainings during the regular hour scheduled? Because we do have a contract with the county or an MOU with the county to help support the town. So it's just looking at where we're spending the overtime, but there's some areas in overtime they don't have control over, like court. That they're not going to be able to control that. So what overtime can we control and see what we can do to help minimize that?
And Karina, I think like the biggest challenge you're going to probably face with that is that at this point, they've gotten used to that overtime being as part of their pay. And that's something that's gonna have to be broken, and that's gonna be probably pretty painful because they're probably at this point depending upon it.
Yes, and interesting that you bring it up because that was one of the comments that were made that I heard, that they were accounting for this. And my comment is that that's not their salary and they should not account for something that is not their
That
part
goes
of
to
their regular
Randy's point.
duties.
They haven't been managing.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's really what this is to do, to kind of restructure the way they're thinking and what they're asking for.
Yeah, it could also be, providing transparency into what their total compensation is, right? Like, this is how much, this is how much you're really making when you take into account that your benefits are being paid for, that this, that, and the other thing, right? So
Yeah.
a look at your total compensation and not just your salary.
We used to, unfortunately, we haven't done this for a while, but when I was the accounting manager, I used to send out at the end of the year a breakdown of what the cost of the employee was to the town. And I had the salary, the Maryland State Retirement, the health benefits, all in that. And there, the FICA, the employer FICA amount, that type of stuff. So that is something that we should pick up and do again.
So I think it's always nice to get some statistics on okay, overtime on a per capita basis, compare that to a similar township and see and show them, hey, or our overtime, we've given you 5 police officers, we should be expecting overtime to be, reduced.
Yes.
Um,
Is that
So-
in that information in that salary or that
I don't think,
study that was done?
I don't think it was.
Okay.
But interesting you bring that up because I thought about looking at per capita and expense, and then because a council member had brought up the cost of the expense per department for a president. And we pulled those numbers from census, and I was thinking of changing how that was presented to change it to household. Because I know exactly how many households are because we bill them, on the utility. And look at it, okay, how many household, what's the expense per household instead of per capita? I would think would be more accurate because I'm counting on census. I don't really, that's maybe what, 2 years behind, where I know exactly how many residential units we have in the town.
Quarter.
And I think that's nice to have, but I think other townships probably won't be as fortunate to have a household data.
Mhm.
And the norm, everyone talks about per capita. And so for you to compare apples to apples, you may want to stick to the per
Okay.
capita. It's nice to also have a deeper dive into saying, okay, and this is what it is on a per household basis.
Mhm.
That would give the council a reality check of, hey,
Okay.
this is going, a little,
Okay.
it's going too fast
Mhm.
and it's burdening your operating costs.
Yeah.
So just one point I want to make towards that is, like, we can, and I think we should do all this analysis, right? However, I go back to the comment you made before, Karina, like, they've gotten used to this. This is a cultural problem, right?
Yes.
Changing culture
Yes.
typically requires changing leadership. And then you compound that with the comment, then, how some of the council people may lend themselves towards the PD department. That makes it very, very challenging. And so, but it's become a cultural problem.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So is there any other than coming back and looking at rebidding out or looking to get proposals from other looking at attorneys in specialty areas and versus and then looking at the cost of an internal attorney compared to outsourcing. Is there any other items that
I just have
recommendations you need to bring up?
I have one more.
Okay.
So for like office equipment, cell phones, things like that, is that office supplies? Are those through centrally managed contracts?
No, but we do, so we do, when departments put in a request for office supplies to finance, and finance will then do a price check between Office Depot, Amazon, Staples, and determine who has the best prices. And most of the time, we're finding that Amazon has the best prices. We do have the Amazon business that we got for free for a year. I think it ends in November. So we do get some discounts from there. But we don't have, well, I take that back. We do have some contracted prices with, I think it's J&R Janitorial Supplies. So we'll also look at that for the contracted pricing that we have with them. But we don't have any like set contract that we purchase from a particular vendor for office supplies or equipment.
So for wireless phones, you don't either?
Not exactly. We use Verizon. That's our carrier, but we don't have any particular vendor that we will go through. We'll do a price comparison on the phones if we need a replacement. There's not a lot of replacements, but since we're on that subject, just a couple things I want to bring up regarding that. So right now, we do a cell phone reimbursement, and most employees get that reimbursement because they use their phone for town business.
Is
I have,
it a full cost reimbursement?
no, no. It's $33 a month. But I am proposing that we no longer allow employees to use their personal phones for town business because I think it's a security issue, especially they have their own personal apps on there. They're exposed. My recommendation, I've been talking with IT, and I have a meeting with them next week. Our IT specialist that came on board last week about switching everybody from a reimbursed stipend per se for their phone, that they are issued a town phone that has certain security on there. And we have a company that will handle all that for us that we're currently paying, but right now it's on a fraction of the devices. But no longer do the personal devices and have more control and security, that they get a actual town issued phone. And we're also looking at, since we have wireless service for a phone, for an iPad, for a laptop, looking at what positions can use a hotspot and avoid having to pay an extra 2 lines, wireless lines for an iPad and a tablet or a computer.
So,
Yeah.
so my experience with that is that it's very hard to, okay, so let me retract. The phones that you give to your workers, they have to sign an understanding that everything and all that is in that phone is the property of the town of La Plata. And they have to make the determination of whether they want to risk that, to have personal usage. It is amazing. It's a daunting task to separate usage of personal usage and work usage. And I think if you say that on the onset, if there's any issue regarding employment with this employee, they have a signed document saying that anything and all information on this phone is property of town of Plata. That's just, straightforward. Back to Nicole's comment, the contract services, I think for supplies, definitely, if you want to control the cost, you have to bid it out and have a sheet of items that are, this is the price no matter what. whether the prices go up or down.
Mhm.
I think it's important now, especially now that we're knowing that a lot of these prices are gonna go up. Um, So we need to make sure that we have a fixed amount of prices for each item. I think that's good for control purposes. So what I'm saying is control in the bidding process. I think just get the biggest items that you have in supplies and control it in the bidding items in the contract. For telephones and for technology, you have to have a signed document by each employee saying that this is the property of Town of
Mhm.
Plata and anything that's in there is ours.
Yeah, and that would be one of the things that we would have to make sure that's done when we convert people from using their personal phones for town business to the town issued phone.
How many
So
people
are
are
you
you
su-
talking about? So
There's quite a few. I would say most people get the stipend over a town phone. And the biggest argument is, well, I don't want to carry two phones. But my argument is that we have to secure the town's data and the information that's being put on there and any risk that your personal habits may affect what you do for the town.
how many people need it?
Well, there's all the police officers,
Okay.
any public work techs that are out in the field. Um, I get one, which I know very well I shouldn't be using my personal phone to get codes to enter in for grant requests or reimbursements or through the bank. So I would need one for all of that. The town manager would probably get one. Anybody that would need to be in contact outside of the office area or anybody that uses their phone to access or submit data or information for the town.
So inspections, planning.
Yeah.
So you're the finance person. So
Mhm.
is it cheaper to give everybody their own town phone versus the stipend?
On the surface, no. However, if we change how we're doing it, instead of having one line for the phone, one line for the tablet, one line for the computer, we would probably be able to reduce the cost there because then they could use the hotspot from their phone for their other devices. And we won't need those lines. So eventually, I do think it will make it um, cheaper or at least break even if we eliminate the unnecessary lines if we require them to use a hotspot, which will be from the phone that the town provides.
Well, you'll still run into the concern that, okay, now I have to deal with two phones. And what's to stop them from just using the phone that the town gives them for everything?
Well, there's going to be security, I guess, parameters set up that they can't download certain apps, that the phone's only required to have these certain apps on there. That would be one of them. Yeah.
Because I imagine the challenge now, because I think it sounds like a lot of people take advantage of the stipend, right? So that would stop right there, right? It would just be whoever needs a phone. So you would save
Right.
costs there. Also on the security side, it sounds like you don't have any monitoring mechanism on the personal phone to make sure that they're compliant.
That is correct. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah.
Is the
And
security of the town's data and platforms and stuff that is being accessed by their phone. There is no security, and we really need to address that.
yeah, and what I'm seeing in enterprise is a rollback from letting people use their personal phones and giving them a stipend, because
Mhm.
that's what my company used to do, to giving out phones, and it is a way that they're controlling costs plus mitigating any potential security incidents.
Yeah. And we have a company that we right now employ to do that. And we really haven't utilized them fully because everybody's using their personal devices. So we need to change that. But there's also, with this company, they also monitor the usage of our phones to tell us, okay, well, this one hasn't been used for so long. You can turn it off. And I did that once. I actually sent out an email to all the department heads and said, hey, these lines have not been used for 3 to 6 months. I want to turn them off. And some departments came back with a valid reason of why they need it on for emergencies at the pump stations or something like that. Very well, but other departments never responded, and I did send out another email, no response, so I turned them off. Found out that the police turned them back on because they're their backup lines in case they need them again. But there were quite a few backup lines, so that's another discussion that IT and the police need to have a conversation of how many backups do they need and what's the turnaround if they need something additional and they've used their, say they get 2 backup lines and they've used that. It shouldn't take that long to get another one established. It's pretty
What do
quickly.
you mean by backup line?
Meaning that in case something goes wrong with some other phone or something and they need one for an officer or something like that. Or need a computer or laptop and that wireless, whatever, it's not working, so they have a backup computer with a wireless connection.
I mean, you can also look at how frequently are these failing to come up with a sort of rate too. Not that they're probably capturing that, but that could be something going forward.
But I can tell what that is because it's the same lines that are not getting any usage and we get a report of those lines that have no usage. So we do know when they are.
Yeah, so they're not failing very frequently.
No,
which
they are
would be
not.
expected.
And again, that's the conversation I'm going to have with the IT specialist next week on how can we manage this. And mainly, I mean, the biggest concern I have is security.
Mhm.
I think we're being pretty careless on the town's information access by allowing that. So is there anything else that I need to bring up and discuss with the town manager other than the attorney on this budget? And the
Any
budget,
line items that you do on a formula basis
um,
other than just targeting or?
I mean, these, I actually go in and I have everything listed by the employee, what benefits they have, what their salary will be with the COLA. So those are pretty as accurate as I can get them. I just need updated information on rates. These items are pretty small, so they're just looking at what historically been done, like the wireless. I'm gonna assume there's gonna be 2 phones at $40 is the typical, actually, I think it might be $34. It's the typical rate for the phones. The fuel, we're looking at that to be maybe a stipend for the town manager. Instead of getting a town manager vehicle, we just give them a stipend for their vehicle, and that would be $50 a month. And these items are pretty small. These pull from the sheets that they've listed. Same with this one. This vehicle reserve, I actually need to get rid of because that is something that I actually want to look at, looking at the actual reserve and how much we should have on the reserve compared to our overall fund balance and not do it as an expense because it's really not an expense. It's basically reserving fund balance for a certain purpose, which this one is the vehicle replacement. These are all the bonds which have fully support from the special taxing. So from there, their operating, you can see went up 4%. The small capital, or what I may call as one-time costs, went down. These I would ignore because these are all related to the bond issuance. But then if you look at the salaries, there's not much of an increase because I assume that the town manager may come in at the same level as the one that was leaving. I'm not sure. They're not on the town manager's not on the pay scale, so it's hard for me to calculate that. Benefits go up 1%, but the contracted services, of course, that went up to 33%. That was mainly because of the amount I put in for the attorney. Supplies and material, it was at 490 and I put 1,000 in here. Because we're getting a new town manager and I didn't know what type of things the town manager would want. There was a decrease of 22%. Again, that's a small capital. So other than the attorney cost, I don't think there was anything other than that really stood out.
When is the council supposed to see your first look at the budget?
March.
And do we know yet when the new town manager will be on board?
I know that they've reviewed applications. I've heard that, I think last week that they reviewed applications. I don't know the status
Okay,
of
so
that.
there's some time in that time period, you might have more detail with respect to the town
Yeah.
manager.
Yeah, the budget does not get adopted until the 22nd of April, so it goes up for review after discussion. So that there's 2 meetings for discussions, one for the general fund and one for the enterprise fund in March with the council. And then the first meeting in April, it goes up for adoption, first reading, and then it gets adopted on the 22nd of April.
I know you said that there's a COLA in there, but what about an increase for the staff in the future?
No, there's not an increase in there. No.
And is that how the town's always done it?
No, we used to do a merit, but ever since they did the comp study, which increased the salaries considerably, but it only affected those employees that were here at the time. But new employees coming on, there has not been a merit or anything in there.
Because that's already what, 2 years old?
Yeah, it's been, so they have not had a merit in FY24 budget or in FY25, and there's none in FY26 budgeted yet. And that's, again, I did this based on how much revenue we have, what we're doing. I mean, that is proposal. We also have that pension that they're wanting. So, and that's going to cost a lot. So, yeah. I mean, you guys can put in a recommendation to say that I think there should be a merit. I mean,
I think if they spent that money for a study to bring the town up to current, that's already 2 years old.
yeah.
But if
It
it
was-
was COLA,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So when they did that study, they took it based on what were employees making, or 65% of employees making in that type of position. And they just kind of said, okay, that's what they're making. So everybody gets that. Yes. And that's where my problem came, is that this was not implemented. There was no evaluation on how long they've been here, how much experience, where did they change on the pay scale, because some positions moved around on the pay scale. There was none of that evaluation. And that's really where this should have, because they did that when there was no HR director and the treasurer that was here was not engaged in the town's activities. So they did it they made this decision. It wasn't a bad decision. Actually, we needed it. It's just how it was implemented wasn't the best way.
but they need to have a plan for going
Yeah.
forward on that. They
And,
can't just sit here
Mhm.
with,
but it did increase the salaries considerably. I think it was over $1 million ended up increasing the salaries because of that study. And since then, there has not been.
Okay.
But our HR director is here if she wants to make any comments regarding salaries and merits and everything.
Something that was looking at, to consider maybe for this fiscal year too is. One of the things that I was looking at, maybe considering for, the next fiscal year is looking at doing a steps to address the merit issue. I'm still playing with numbers on how to scale that to make it set up, but that might be a solution to help some of the cost issues in between and to keep people, because right now, one of the arguments that we haven't gotten a merit for the last 2 years, in addition to the ginormous increase in salaries, was we haven't been doing, we hadn't had performance evaluations either. So how do we know what we're meriting against? How do we know who's performed enough to rate an increase versus not? So that's the other reason why we haven't had one.
Are you proposing the steps in fiscal 26 or later?
Well, it would be something, I would love to get one in 26 if we can agree and work on it and make it make sense. It was I would sooner than later, for sure.
How do you feel about it?
I think we need a better understanding of the direction of our expenses.
Sure.
Because of some of the things, and particularly, I mean, I hate to say it, but the pension is gonna cost a lot. The fees have already, what we thought were gonna be the fees to maintain this pension were not expected, and how building this pension. And the amount that needs to be contributed to this pension is more than what we anticipated.
Talking about the pension that's already been approved, or you
No.
talking about the proposed one?
The proposed enhanced one. It's
Okay.
in this, it was in this FY 25 budget, but we are just now getting with vendors and discussing that, what's involved and everything, and we're getting a more idea of the actual cost of that. So that amount that was budgeted, we have not used on the pension, but it's what needs to be budgeted in future years is a lot more than what we budgeted in FY 25.
Was it? I think it's a foregone conclusion they're gonna definitely do it.
There's 3 council members that are on board for it.
Is that right?
Yes.
And how many staff members does that impact on the big picture for the whole town?
About 40, I think,
And how many staff members in town work for the town?
80.
Hey,
So 50% of them will see the benefit of that, but nobody's gonna see a performance evaluation or steps or a merit increase because of that.
But I
Well, I
don't,
mean, it's a large, it's part of the reason why, I mean, because of the how they implemented the rate study and put that in effect, and then they adding this cost on top of that, it is increasing our personnel cost quite a bit.
well, at the last meeting, we brought up the idea of 457 as opposed to this.
I would love that idea. That
and
is,
And that could be extended to all the
mhm,
population,
yes.
right? I mean, is it too late to recommend that we not go the path of the separate pension and go instead to a 457, which will cost less and benefit more?
No, you can make that recommendation because we have not, even though we're looking into the pension and working with companies to get an idea of the cost and the setup, we have not implemented it yet.
Yeah, we haven't signed any contracts.
So there's still time to make your recommendations for something else.
Sure. Okay.
Well, I would make that recommendation that we stop pouring money into this. Different words could be used, but instead consider a tried and true program such as the 457.
And there's been talk of those people that have more physically demanding job, which is what this pension is for, get a actual set contribution and then a matching, like, and everybody get a matching, something like that.
Right, so a person who's got a desk job could get a lower match
Mhm.
than someone that's got a hazardous job, right?
Yes,
And that could still be handled in the 457.
correct.
You're shaking your head.
yeah, that's a little divisive. Because one of the reasons for the pension is attraction of, employees. So I would go with, just a general, as opposed to, your job is better, is more risk than,
We still have the pension. We have the Maryland State pension.
yes.
So that's not going anywhere. That's
Right.
staying. It's these employees that have more physically demanding jobs. That's what the council wants to accommodate. And the way that it's been proposed to accommodate and the direction that 3 of the council members want to go is to add another pension to fill in the gap so that they can retire early and get a higher benefit.
Retiring early also puts a detriment to the community. That means your turnover is going to increase.
Mhm.
It's also you're losing knowledge base in
Mhm.
your employees.
Yep.
Talking about the officers, police officers, and I'm sure the fire department as well. So, I mean, those are things to consider.
Mhm.
The merit increases or anything regarding merit, please keep in mind that also there's going to be indirect costs in your overtime.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
So if one goes up,
Yep.
please make sure that the other overtime
Mhm.
costs go up too. And if there weren't any merit increases in the past 2 years or 3 years, as it was said, it seems to me like the employees uh, are taking, are expecting overtime to help offset their salaries. So if there aren't any changes in the overtime levels of expenditures, merit increases may exacerbate the overtime line item. So I think that's something we
Yes.
should look into.
Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah,
Do we need a motion?
I was gonna ask the same thing, because we might not all agree.
Right, so because everybody may not agree, like he's saying, and it would put the weight of the committee behind it. All it will be thrown out one of them.
well, these are all recommendations that I'll be bringing to the, town manager.
I don't care where you take them. I do care, but I mean, I don't think that's important. I think it's important to have the feel of the backing of the committee officially.
Okay, no, so do you want to do an emotion to, to evaluate the town attorney costs, looking at to, revisit that contract and put that out for a contract, looking for an attorney in specialty areas and have multiple contracts and look at internal versus outsourcing, the attorney costs.
That's a very well worded motion. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Then we'll, when we get to the police budget, we'll bring up the pension part because that's where it really is.
All right.
Is there anything else?
I'm sorry. I agree with you there, but I'll just let you know, another reason why I'm putting that forth is it sounds to me like the three council persons who are after this are really serving their constituency, and I understand that. But it feels like it's almost at any cost. They need to also appreciate that what you're looking for is going to cost money, and you need to figure out how does that weigh into the overall expenses of running the town.
Yes. Yep. If you look at year over year, and I will get you guys a report a year over year for each department and the cost.
Yeah, and I think it would be fair for another department to say, well, if they're getting it, why aren't we getting it? And again, that can be solved by 457.
Yeah. Oh, I'm complete. That was my recommendation when this came up, was we go the 457 route and not a pension route.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, then I wonder if it opens it up to discrimination as well. I mean, that's something that you have to consider.
Well, that's what I was alluding to, wasn't
What, the
it?
457 would open up to, I'm not sure.
No. Only offering a pension to select people in select positions.
That I believe was brought up, but one thing that was mentioned is that it's not uncommon for the police to have a different set of benefits than other civilian personnel.
And that could be handled with a different match.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
But I believe you also said that Public Works and the police,
Yes.
so
So now you're
Public
going,
Works is the oddball. Yes. That is the
Yeah,
one
and that's
that keeps coming up.
yeah, and I think that's where you're opening yourself up, not necessarily law enforcement, because that is common, but then when you start to, move in a different direction, I think that's where you're potentially opening yourself up.
Yeah. And that has been one of the things that keep coming up is why is Public Works in here? And the argument, well, they also have physically demanding jobs, so we didn't want to exclude it. But also it was kind of like, well, we're not just saying it's for the police, we have other groups in there. And I think that was kind of the way for them to push this forward.
Yeah.
Well,
And is that everyone in Public Works? I would say probably not, right?
No. So it was based on position, and the position had to be physically demanding. So it did not include like any office staff in the police or any management staff, and the same thing with Public Works. It did not include any office staff or management staff in this pension. They would be excluded from the pension.
It's an unusual packaging.
Yeah,
Very,
it's
very.
very unusual.
Yeah.
Because also, I would think like your best workers may not actually want to go up to managerial positions, even though they're more suited because they're going to lose benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. This has become a lot more complicated than it really should have been.
Well, I think that just goes to the argument of a 457, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I
So-
may, this is Kelly.
Call
On
for
that
the-
motion that was on the floor, the motion was to make a formal recommendation to the town manager about reevaluating the town attorney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, correct?
Yes.
And was there a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
There was, I seconded it. And I think somebody else did too.
So, Mr. Gann, you forwarded the motion and chair seconded.
Yes.
And was there a vote?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's just check in.
Question.
Should we be doing a vote? Okay, can we do a vote?
Yeah.
Well, we have a motion and a second. The whole idea was to make sure that the recommendation is carried by the committee.
Okay,
So it should have a vote, yes.
okay. Should we do that vote now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, so that motion was which bit? The pension,
The,
right?
no, the
The
attorney.
attorney.
We're
So
gonna get to the
pension.
pension.
We're gonna
The
have to under
pension,
the-
I want to wait until we get to the police
the
because
police
that's
budget.
really where it is.
Well, that's
There,
makes
there,
sense.
there is some in public works, but I will put this out right now. So I did a calculation, which I did looked at the increase in benefit, the earlier retirement number of years, and the weight on the pay scale. And when I took those three items in consideration to see how much of the cost should be put to the police department compared to the public works was 5.9% of the cost because the benefit was much more favorable of the police, a higher benefit and earlier retirement for them. And their pay is much higher than the public works pay.
I'm with you on waiting till we're
Yeah.
we're covering that department. Lest I lose the thought when we come to that point, I remember at a previous meeting, I had done this calculation that showed that our per capita police population was higher than most municipalities. So we ought to revisit that. I could be wrong, could be right, but we ought to have that understanding.
I would probably also argue, and I haven't looked at this, but I would also probably argue that our crime rate is lower than most municipalities.
I would love to get some type of evaluation on that.
We got more police, of course.
Well, I mean, that's the flip side. Somebody could argue that, but it's, when you talk about like extra pensions, okay, like I can kind of understand that for maybe a police officer in downtown Chicago, right? I mean, there's areas where you could say, okay, that maybe that makes sense, right? I'm not sure that, again, we're, I guess, beating a dead horse here, but I think there's other factors to consider as to why it doesn't make sense. And, also the number of police officers do we have? Does it make sense per capita? Does it make sense based on, current and historical crime rates as compared to, similar areas?
Yes, okay. I will.
Can
Take
we
that.
move on to the finance,
Yes,
the next tab?
yes. All right. Okay. So for finance, our target was 1,078,019. There was an increase in the salaries because we changed the procurement coordinator to a procurement and asset manager, which pushed that position up on the pay scale. see, there's an increase in the user fees, and mainly that is the increase in the contract that we have with our finance system that will increase year over year. The auditors decreased slightly only because I do not anticipate there to be a audit regarding the ARPA funds because we'll be under that 700,000 threshold in FY '24. We were not, so we had that special audit that we have to have.
So we
tra-
don't require an auditor for our overall finances?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have an audit, but because we had the ARPA funds and we spent like almost over like $8 million of the ARPA funds, we have to have another special audit.
Okay.
It's not a single audit, but it's similar to a single audit. But because we were only over that 700,000 because of the ARPA funds, we don't have to have a full single
I
audit.
understood.
Yeah, but we're not going to have that in FY '26 because we're probably only going to be, I think, like 500,000 of the ARPA funds we're left to spend.
700 is the-
Yeah. So that's not in there.
So when was the contract last looked out?
When I came on board 2 years ago, we have a 3-year contract with them.
And
Yeah.
the local auditor?
Yes. Yeah, we had one auditor and they decided they were no longer doing municipalities. So we had to go and seek out another one. And the person who worked on the audit prior years actually went to the firm that we ended up going with. Yeah. So they were pretty familiar.
Big one here.
Yeah. So they were pretty familiar with our operations. But it was still required they had to pretty much start from scratch because it was a new auditing firm. So there was a lot involved there.
How long had they been doing it with the other firms?
I want to say like 8 years, something like that. I could be wrong.
Okay, they weren't the lead though all that time.
I don't believe
Same
so.
person.
Yeah.
When do you anticipate this ARPA related audit to occur?
It's happening now.
It's happening now.
Yeah. They finished up, the audit was finished on the 31st and they started the special. It's not a single audit, but similar to the single audit. Yeah. Let's see, what else?
I see you have some attorney fees in here as well.
Yes, I
Same.
put a 5. There's not a lot that comes up, but I like to put 5,000 in here just to, well, okay, I put 4,500 in here. I think I had 5,000, but I was too far over, so I reduced it. We don't have a lot. Typically, what will happen is if we don't use it, I might do a budget amendment to move it to the administration because some things fall under there and because I don't always know everything that's going on and I'm not privileged to everything, I have to kind of guess where it goes and it tends to go to administration.
But this is the same
Yeah, same attorney,
attorney.
yes. But the bulk of it, we would bring it up during the administration. The opera services are no longer going to happen because we have now used up all the opera funds as of December 31st. So that's not in the budget. So there was, budget went down 724 and, I'm below my target. I thought I was above my target. Never mind. So we're below the target. Our budget is not increasing overall, but part of that reason is the offset of the ARPA services that are no longer going to happen, and then the increase in the salaries for the change in the type of position.
2 questions.
Mhm.
On bank charges. This number looks low. And maybe what I'm thinking is in another department, but
No.
if our population is using a credit card to pay for their water bills, where do credit card fees show?
That's actually in the enterprise funds because the only reason we have those is for the payment of the water bills.
Okay.
So those are in the enterprise. That's just in case something happens. I just put it there as placeholder. We don't really pay much fees
Oh, yeah,
for
it's
our
small.
banking. Yeah.
I wouldn't be capturing,
yeah.
making sure I thought something was missing.
No, there's actually, there's a calculation I do. I look at how much, so we pretty much are consistent with like a 5 to 7% increase in credit card payments year over year. So I increase the fees based on assuming that we're going to have a 7% increase in the number of people using the credit cards to make payments.
Okay, and when you said that we won't need admin fees for ARPA anymore because we're done.
Mhm.
Let me make sure that I understand what you mean by done. Have we spent all of the ARPA funds?
Correct. But just a little note. So we did a budget amendment to ensure that we spent them. And what we did is we said that we were going to move those funds that were originally for some projects. There was a whole list of projects to salaries and benefits. So we've used the ARPA funds to pay for the salary and benefits. But what I did is I set up a fund balance reserve for those original projects. So I moved 4.7 million into this fund balance reserve to be used on the original projects that were being planned for those funds.
Okay, that's a big number. And that's actually fitting with what I'm thinking. Do we have the management to make sure that those projects get done?
Most of them are in the water, stormwater, MS4 projects, I think it's 1.8 million. There's projects for a interconnection for the water agreement once we get to one. So that would be more of a public works question. But you bring that up, there's one thing I want to say about the grants that we received. So we got 2 grants that hopefully will be, I'll get the contracts to sign for the town manager to sign for these grants. And one's for the community center, the Dorchester Community Center, which we have 1.8 million, I believe, is in there. And then 250,000 for the police station. That is one thing I have asked, who's going to manage? We have not, these have been sitting out there for 4 years because nobody's managed it. Well, we're now getting the funds. We need to know who's managing it. And that's a question that I've asked. Who's going to manage this? We've got the funds. Now who's going to manage it? But as far as the ARPA projects, most of those are in the enterprise funds, and those projects are things that they know that they need to be done.
I mean, is there any appetite to hire a grants manager? Because I mean, as you know, grants have very specific things that you have to be able to show in terms of the execution of them. Is there any appetite to do that, understanding like that part of that person's job could be doing business development to secure additional grants as well?
Not that I'm aware of. However, in this budget, you will see that they put in back in for a, I guess, a lobbyist or something to go forth to the state on the town's behalf. They did put that back in the budget because they did not renew it later last year, they did not renew it, but it's going to be a push to get that. There is nothing to talk about having somebody, an actual employee manage grants. I know the police have their own grant writer and they seek out, and maybe that we could look at that, or maybe do the same thing that the police are doing, have somebody for public works, because public works is very expensive in getting some of this infrastructure replaced and upgraded that needs to be done. So maybe that's something that we can look at, getting a contractor or grant writer in to do that on the public works side. But the police do have one and they do have it in their budget.
Well, and I think it's not just the writing part, it's the managing part, right?
Yeah.
The point that was made earlier, and it could be managed in conjunction with a subject matter expert, you know, within that particular expertise, right?
No, I get what you're saying. The one thing now, right now, I do the reporting part, but I don't manage the actual activity of the grants. I rely on the departments to provide me that information. And when I get that information every quarter, I will submit the report to like the DOJ or whoever of the activities for reimbursement. So the financial part I'm currently doing, but the actual activity for that grant, there's really nobody signed to manage that.
Yeah, and I can tell you from doing single audits and being very familiar with that regulation, there has been a push for a long time for it to be more outcome focused. And I would expect that you're going to see that in the coming year or so. Which puts more emphasis not on the financial aspect of it, right? But on like, are you actually achieving what you said you were going to do?
And that's where we definitely would need a manager because that is not my area. And again,
Yeah.
I'm finance. I report the financial activity, not the actual
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. Trying to think. So,
Back to this
Mhm.
spreadsheet here, the license and
Mhm.
license and
Yeah.
user fees.
so those are right here, and that's for our Tyler Technology. That's our finance system. So that's where we have our general ledger, the utility billings, the AP, AR, fixed assets, all of that's in there. And then we also have another component, which is the Tyler Content Manager. And that's where we can keep all the documents related to each transaction connected with that transaction. So we right now attach all the contracts to the vendor, all the invoices that are in that system. Where we can do it with the utility billing, the fixed assets. So any document that's related to a fixed asset, we can now have attached there. And we aren't trying to find that in a group of other files somewhere. It's all right in that system.
So this is where the procurement system is that you've been
Yeah.
putting into place.
Yes, and we've had that. We just haven't fully utilized it. We're now trying to pushing to have them submit any requests that are over 5,000 through that system. They can attach all the documentation to it, fill in every piece of it. And now we've got the contract that they're proposing, all the, there's a whole list of questions that I asked them to answer. They can just put that right in that area and attach everything.
You're happy with the support they're providing you?
For the most part, yeah.
And you sound like me with Excel. I'm probably using 20% of its capabilities, right?
No, Excel, I use Excel a lot, but yeah, there's a lot of areas that we need to utilize. I mean, even like the service orders, why are we putting, and that's one thing that I've been discussing with the billing coordinator is let's get rid of these paper service orders. We've got electronic system. Everybody has access. I have unlimited licenses. It's a web-based. Everybody, I can give access to everybody in the town to for whatever their duties are responsible. If they're supposed to go in and put a water meter in and report that water meter number, they can do it right in there. Just bring up that service order, put that meter in, they're done. So we definitely need to utilize the system more and we're paying for it. So it's just like the AP automation that we put in place a few weeks ago. Now all invoices come to finance, it gets scanned in, it gets reviewed to make sure everything's scanned in correctly, it gets coded, then it goes to the departments for review, then approval, then it comes back to me for review and submit for payment.
That whole process is electronic.
Yes. Yep. We just started that like 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And that way I even know what invoices are outstanding. It's not sitting on the desk of the department for weeks. It comes to finance first. And that's another thing that we're working on. Do not sit there and hold these invoices. They come to finance. We don't care if you review them or not. You can reject them, prove them, whatever you want in the electronic process.
So that was a question I was actually going to raise earlier, gotten past it. I'm assuming you're keeping track of the age of APs, accounts payable.
We pay once it's approved. Every week we do our pay.
Okay.
So if they've already approved everything and went through the process, I'm not holding it. I'm just paying it. Yeah. Yeah. And then of course, this is the auditor. And then we have a contract with the folding machine that we have, which is for the utility bills and contingency in case something comes up. The training, most of it's going to be for the GFOA conference or Tyler Connect. I'm doing the GFOA conference in this year. So I'm probably going to do the Tyler Connect, which is our finance system. I've been there once. We also, since we have someone new for the procurement and asset manager, I put some training budget in here for that person. And then because I'm now requiring everybody in finance to do training, I put a little bit more extra in there for that. So those are my estimates for the trainings. Small cap, I am requesting 2 laptops, one for the new procurement and asset manager, because I'm anticipating she's not always going to be in the office and will need access. And then the other one for the accountant so that they can stay on task when they're not in the office. and then some years down the road, replace the accounting manager's computer, which by the time we replace it, it's probably going to be like 6 or 8 years old, and then replace this computer, which will probably be like 6 years old by then. Then the other thing that I have in here is a program enhancement, and that is doing a formal assessment of our assets. I am debating about even if we're going to do that, if we're just going to do it in-house. I do have we're trying to set up a meeting with a consultant on what's involved. So we're trying to get Public Works, since most of the assets are in Public Works, and see what's involved in that. So this might be something we just do in-house, but if we do decide to outsource it, I'm estimating it to be about 50,000. I'm just not sure if that's something we want to invest now, or based on the conversation after we have with them, should we actually take the time and do that in-house? I did recently learn that Public Works have a GIS system that really keeps track of their pipes and everything, which was more than I thought. So I'm now leaning towards knowing that we might be able to do this in-house.
They also have a SCADA system, which should give you all of the big pieces of equipment, they're all online
So-
as well.
Once we sit down with them and see exactly what they have, this may be something I want, because we still have to give them all the data and everything. So there's still work on our end, even if we hire a consultant.
Based on my previous experience with the civil engineering world and the town,
Mhm.
I think what they have is primarily a sewage system and water, but not stormwater.
Yeah.
And we have underground stormwater that's decaying around town.
Mhm.
It needs to be
Yep.
asset protected.
Yeah, once we talk to Public Works, maybe we take on maybe the fleet, the building, and maybe sewer and water, and outsource stormwater. Maybe that's the case, not the whole thing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we're gonna have a discussion about that, but I put that in there because I do think we need to establish a good asset management process.
Yeah, but whether that's done in-house or not, it ought to be incorporated into the existing GIS system, much like your Tyler Technologies thing, everything's together,
Mhm.
but all those assets in one place.
Yeah, and Tyler actually has a pretty good asset management system. Let me show you. We do not utilize it fully. We don't. And we really should. My gosh, it's already, we're only on the second budget sheet.
Mhm.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Let's. All right, I'm just gonna show you this quickly. And then we're gonna have to go through. So right now, I'm only keeping track of assets for accounting purposes, not really on how are we utilizing, what's it being used for, what condition. But in here, we can do that. Now, this one was just set up, and believe me, we don't even have pictures. This is the only asset we have a picture for. But we're trying to use the system more. But in here, we've got the departments, the different classifications to keep track of the assets, a general description of, so we've got the tag in here, the serial number, years, we've got when it was acquired, how much it was. Then we got this condition part, which we never even use. So we could reassess them as needed and use that portion of the module. The depreciation, we said, based on a straight line, we don't do any other type of depreciation straight line. Improvements, we could easily put everything in here, what work order when it was done, but currently we're not utilizing that either. The insurance, we could put that information in, which isn't too hard because we have that. The maintenance, we could put that information in, which so there's a lot in here that we aren't even utilizing, that we could be, that would help us with managing these assets. And since I have to keep this part because this is what we've used, it has the whole history set, but we could use this in projection to some other asset management that other departments are using, and come to find out that seems like every department has their own asset management system. So we need to figure out, what are we overlapping? What do we need? Which ones really do we need to use, and focus on that? Okay, let's go back to the budget sheets. All right, so is there any things that need to be discussed regarding the finance, any recommendations that need to be discussed with the town manager for the finance department?
No.
And then move on. All right. This one should be fairly quick. This is where it's not tied to any specific department. This is where, like, our general liability insurance is falling. Some printing and postage that's general, that really has no connection. The contracted services, I can't remember what those are. There's the copier lease in there. There's public information, officer communications that go out, that we actually have a company do any videos or media or anything that we use. There's the wireless watchdogs, which is the one that manages our usage and makes recommendations on what should stay, what should cancel, which we need to start actually acting on. And then this is where we're going to have somebody like a lobbyist, I guess, the cost of them for acting on the town's behalf. So that's where the 93,700 comes in under the general services. There is no small cap under there. Other than that, there's nothing else. So this budget's actually decreasing from FY25. Part of the reason why it is lower is because we did not renew the contract with Cornerstone in the fall. So those consulting contracted services expenses are no longer being captured in here.
So which budget are you in now?
This is general services. Really, it's not connected to really any department. It's kind of supports the town as a whole, or the general fund as a whole.
Are we still getting a lot of our insurance? I don't even know what they call it, Maryland local. government
Legit.
insurance.
Yeah, yes, that's where our insurance is.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we just got, I want to say like 16,000. They did an audit, a 10-year audit, and found out they overcharged us, and they reimbursed us 16,000.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm kind of lost.
So I don't know what you're.
Oh.
Part Department 165 is what we're looking at?
Yeah, and that's a
Sure.
general that supports the town as a whole. There's no employees, there's nothing specific. It's just, it can't be direct to any department. Whatever they do is kind of supports the town as a whole. You,
No, I don't remember looking at that.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just think of it as something that, it's not specifically related to a department, but the town as a whole. And that's like, advocating on the town's behalf, like with the state or something like that. The copy machine that everybody at town hall uses. So it's not directly to a department.
So how come that's not part of administration?
We just have had it separated out because
Separate.
even though it's like the copier, administration uses it, finance uses it, planning uses it, HR uses it, everybody uses it. So it's not, we're not we don't want to take out the time to say, what percentage of this copier should go to each of these departments. So this is more of supporting all the general fund, not to a specific department. So last year, I mean, this one actually went down, so FY 25, it was at 183. This year we're budgeting 161, so it went down 12%, 21,000. And I'm going to tell you the reason why it's going down that much is because this postage used to be in this line item, and now we have the system where we know exactly what department's using what postage, and we can allocate that out very easily with our postage machine. Which reminds me, where's that postage machine?
Disappeared, huh?
Yeah. That should be in here.
Yeah, I saw it. Pitney Bowes,
Yeah,
right, I saw it somewhere.
it is. Maybe it's under,
Oh, no.
okay, it's under rents. That's where it is. Okay. All right, it's in there. Never mind. It's in there. Okay. All right. Any other questions with this one? HR. Gotta hide. Yes. There's that. So in the HR department, a couple things that have changed since we actually hired an HR director. One of the things, is the cost of like when we hire an employee for drug testing, those type of things that we put in place, health exams, that used to go to the departments. We are now just putting it all under HR. So now that department has those type of expenses in there. Tuition reimbursement is under HR, used to be whatever department utilized the tuition reimbursement, the expense went there, but now it's all under HR. The holiday parties and stuff like that, that was under administration is now over in HR. Employee appreciation lunches, that's in HR. Trying to think if there was anything else. Those are the main items that moved, that expenses were originally in other departments. Over the last couple of years, we've moved them over into the HR department.
So what are the dues and memberships?
So the dues and memberships are here. Let me see if I can make this bigger. There's SHRM, which is a professional networking and compliance source. There's professional networking and compliance for PS. You want to explain? You want to explain these?
SHRM and PASHRA are both HR, national HR organizations like the GFOAs for finance. That's the HR version of them. One is, SHRM is more widespread and PASHRA is public sector specific.
So why such a big jump?
Oh, that's because they are, administration has decided they want to offer gym memberships to all employees. And it's $15 a month for each employee. And we put that expense into the HR budget. It's to promote wellness within the organization. So that's 18,000 a year is what we're budgeting.
Each employee in the town, not just in the HR department?
Yes,
Okay.
all town employees.
Gotcha.
Yep, all town employees. It's just being budgeted under HR.
Right.
Yes. So, and that is something new for this budget year. We haven't offered that before. It's been discussed for several years of trying to promote wellness within the town.
Could that become a credit toward the health insurance one day?
That has been one of the things, yeah, that we talked about, that it could help reduce our premiums, especially because the town pays 100% of the premium.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the jump in the hospitality?
Oh, that's because we're moving the expense for the employee holiday party and employee appreciation lunches from administration to HR. Are there any other questions regarding this one? The budget, the target was 314. They're slightly under, and there was no increase from the prior year budget. Well, it was a decrease of $589, but no increase.
Okay, it's a decrease.
And what did you say was the reason for the license and user fees? Where did they move to, the individual departments? Because it dropped from 36,000 down to,
Yes, I saw that. Oh, we don't know
1,400.
that. We planned something, but since nobody ever put any details, we have no idea. That's why now everybody has to put a detail. So here are all the contracted services that are now. So we got the tuition reimbursement, the ads, license and user fees. The only things we have in here are background checks that would need to be done when employees being hired. And then the posters that are required to be available to posted around in workspaces. That's every 3 years. So we're going to have one this year, but not another till 2029. There is Paylocity, which is our HR and payroll system. There's the pension plan fees. That's the administration fees that the Maryland State Pension bills us for. And then there's the Time for Care Act. That is the, what is it? The agreement that the town will be in that pool. And that's the service fees for being in that pool for governments.
On your previous page, ads and notices, I also noticed that on the legislation side. Why would it be on here?
That's for HR's, for recruiting, in case we want to highlight
Oh, okay. Okay.
a position to try to get higher visibility.
So I'll save my question till we get to legislative.
Legislative probably for listing
Planning, not.
planning.
Well, I highlighted it on planning, but where you're going is probably on legislative also.
Yeah, we have to put out notices of different when something's happening, like ordinance.
Public hearings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, whatever we're required based on our town code, we have to put in the paper certain time. Even like with finance, we have to advertise our budget and make it so that residents know we're reviewing the budget and out for comment and stuff. So be those. Is there any other questions for HR? Or recommendations? Oh gosh, I really want to get to PD, so I'm going to skip. And we're going to go to public safety. We're going to do the PD. And so again, so the PD, some of the
What
Police
town
department.
are you in?
public safety, under public safety, there's the PD. I don't even think we'll have enough time if we adjourn at 4 to get through here.
So what program is this?
The
What's
police,
number?
200.
200, okay.
So you can see the PD put in the 220 for the overtime based on their overtime. And actually, maybe I can even show you what I was talking about, how overtime has increased significantly year over year. And why I want them to start paying attention and evaluate this. And as you can see here, and unfortunately I can't make this bigger, but let's say in 14, say, they were at 132, in 16, they were at 97, in 18, they were at 115, in 20, they were at 155, and since then, it's been over 200,000 since FY 21.
How has the number of policemen grown in that time?
Well, in 23, FY 23, they got 5 new officers, and then in FY 24, they got 2 new officers.
So are you saying that the amount of overtime per policeman is climbing?
I would assume so, because the amount of overtime, even though we've added the officers, continue to climb.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and that's what this budget was meant to start making departments think about how much they're spending in these different areas. And that is why I did not put the overtime in that target. It's not meant to say, well, you can't spend more than this or request more than this, but it's meant to say, think about what you're doing and evaluate what you're doing. So some of these, so anything in green I did, and you can see the pension, this pension line, which I know it says IMC, but because that's what we have established. 500,000 of this is the startup cost of just putting in to cover benefits. So the other 175,000 is what the town would pay as a portion of their salary, which is 10% of those employees that are qualified for what's under the pension. The other thing that I wanted to point out is the costs. So here's some of their contracted costs. This CODI system is their asset management system. Again, they have one, Public Works have one, Finance has one. We need to kind of figure out what's kind of consolidate these. But we are estimating to build the plan is going to cost 100,000 just from the conversations that HR has had with the 2 vendors that are willing to take this on. And of course, the PD I'm estimating is the expense is going to relate to 94.1% of the cost because the benefit is really for the PD. If you look at the increase in the actual benefit to the early retirement to the weighted up the pay scale, and then maintaining the plan with everything that needs to be involved, we're estimating to be around 70,000. Again, we don't know because we're still in the planning process and talking with vendors. So that is one of the reasons why the cost of the PD is much higher than the target. They do have a grant rider that they put in here for $7,500. And then few leases. This is something I keep bringing them up with them, that we have a grant program that uses the same company to lease vehicles, but it's $200 less per month for them. Why can't we get the same rate? And I keep bringing that up and they keep saying they'll look into it. Trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, their asset systems costing 17,000. And that's about what the Public Works is costing. So we need to get a handle on that. And that's one of the things that we're going to meet about. Uniforms, they said they were unable to fill out this worksheet on what uniforms they need for the year. I've asked them to come back with, well, what do you think based on employees? The travel and training is another item that they just took what was previously, and I asked them to fill out, well, what type of training do you really need? You have a vacancy, I think 2 vacancies, you're going to have to send them to the academy. Put that information in here. Any other trainings, because trainings is one of the big lines for overtime. So what are those trainings? Who's going to be going to those trainings? So I've asked them to go back and reevaluate that. I've also asked them to go back in and let me know the cost of per event. Our events coordinator, she broke out the cost for each event she's putting on and what she estimates those costs to be for each event so that we can look back, okay, what did that event really cost us and what did we budget for? And that's what I'm asking for the PD to do the same thing. You're going to do a block party. Well, tell me how much you think is going to be in overtime that you're going to have to do for the officers to manage this block party. What contracted services, what supplies do you need? So I put some of the events in here that I know that they do to help guide them in preparing this. There's the small capital, there's several things that they want. They want their, some painting done at the police station. There's, some replacements of wire speakers. They want to replace some of their, tough books, which is their laptops within their, vehicles. It looks like they want some more filing cabinets in here. There's more weapons that they want to get and replacements of tasers, but that's not in this year. So in here, the target was the 5,132,000, which again does not include the overtime as within the calculated target. There's so much in here. There's also the new speed camera program that they put in. So I put that information in based on what I know. Some of these items that were supported by fees, like the hospital, there's a contract and they pay 62.5% of the 2 officers that I put under the program cost. So I added a new category in here, which we called programs costs in here so that we can identify, well, how much are these program costs that we get supported fees from, like the speed cameras, the parking tickets, the hospital. But I just started doing that last year, breaking these out into different activities so we can track those. But the overall operating costs actually went up 129,000, right? Roughly that. No, it went up higher because I have to put in the town's cost for the hospital for the 2 officers. So their target was 5.1 million. Their operating is 5.3, so it's 242 over the target. But again, part of that is the pension. That's 160,000 in here, and their overtime. And
when you created the target budget, you took into consideration the things that you moved out of their budget and put into like HR and stuff like that.
yes, oh yes. So like I said, the target was based on operating, not anything that's supported by fees, like the parking tickets, those expenses, we get fees for those. So I didn't put that in there. That's a separate piece. The speed cameras, which unfortunately I think we're gonna hopefully break even, if anything, because I think when that was proposed, they really didn't think about the actual cost of the contract and how much is coming in. It's costing us around close to 180,000 a year. And that is about what we're getting with the revenue so far. And I'm anticipating revenue go down because as people learn that speeding cameras are there, they're not going to speed. And if we're paying 180,000 a year, so there's a concern there. I don't think that was fully thought through because they actually in FY24, the revenue from the speed cameras was supposed to support the 2 officers. But it can't even support itself so far from what I'm seeing. So that's a concern there. But those actual expenses aren't in this target budget because they have other revenue that's supposed to support it. And I believe it's the hospital, the photo enforcement, and the parking that has those supporting revenues. But the big outliners are the pension. And so for recommendations, you guys want to bring up the consider a 457 over over a pension. That was a lot of me talking about that. Did you guys look over the PD budget?
The only thing I'm on the budget,
Mhm.
line 208 program,
Oh,
went up 5,717%. What is meant by program?
hold on. Oh, those are the programs. What line are you looking at?
208,
2A. So those are the programs. Yeah, those are the parking tickets, the speed enforcement, and the hospital that we have they support 62.5% of 2 officers. And when I say programs, I'm talking about costs, expense that are supported by other revenues, not
okay.
general taxpayer revenues. That's what that is. Because I want to separate that out from the other operating costs, because those don't necessarily need the tax revenues to support those expenses.
But another reason why it's climbed as related to the increase in our police population, because there's a demand for that need in other organizations that are getting supported by them
Mhm.
to an extent. Okay.
So the photo enforcement that you're getting the revenue on, is there any analysis being done with that?
Not yet. I do have, so as of December, end of December, we got, I believe, 98,000. Actually, I can tell you exactly what we got. Here, hold on. I can show you. Revenue and photo enforcement. So as of today, as of what we have posted today, we have received 104,000.
Those are the ones at school.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And they apparently move them.
They can. So there's actually 8 places that they can put these cameras,
Oh.
and they have 4 of them. So they can
Okay.
move them around. Yes. Yep.
How does that bring you an income?
Well, they get a speeding ticket.
$40. I think
Yes,
it
it is.
So who determines the rate on the speeding ticket?
Okay.
I don't know who determined that, but that's what it is. I'm assuming the police chief and the town manager
So
are
it's
working
not the
together to
state
figure
or
out.
anything
No,
like that?
not that I'm aware of. It could be, but that's what they put it as.
You mean the amount?
Yeah, because I mean, if it's costing more to have it, or they're only breaking even.
Well,
I had to guess, though. I bet the legislature has put a limit on it.
okay, and that might be why. The other thing that the chief and I have talked about is that some of these tickets have not been paid in their 180 days. Well, the contract that we had stated that they were going to do the collections. Come to find out that they can't do the collections per state law or something, and then we have to do it. So that's something that we're going to have to establish a policy and procedure in place so that we can put those.
You can't post them with the MVA?
Well, we can, but we have to do that. But
Okay.
when we engaged in this contract, that was specified by the vendor doing that.
Okay, so they owe us some money, right?
That's exactly what I said. Because they haven't billed us. I'm like, wait a minute, but you guys aren't able to uphold this portion of the contract. So
So you should take a look at how much revenue is, that's percentage wise, and
yeah, so that is a discussion that we have to have with them. So, but then that means also now finance has to take on that responsibility.
again, yeah.
Yeah.
But why can't that, if this is under the PD, why can't their administrative staff handle that?
I rather the
Okay.
finance handle.
Parking break even or make money or create
It
revenue?
slowed down a lot. So I looked at this the other day last week, and I looked at the history, the monthly history, and we really have slowed down. We were doing okay, and then the last couple of months, there's nothing in January. So we can actually look at, look at that. Hold on. To see where parking is. So right now, yes, parking is, however, with that said, I still need to do an allocation of salaries on here. So one of the things of making the cadet full-time was that 25% of the cost of the cadet was for parking tickets. I've done that at the end of the year. I'm actually rethinking of how I do that allocation, making it quarterly so that we can have a better idea of the expense versus the revenue coming in for that activity. There's a couple things that we used to do at the end of the year that I'm looking at doing quarterly to get a better idea of revenue and the expenses.
You put that motion on before we forget it.
On the 457,
Yes,
you want to reword what you had or because you were already typing it in.
Oh, I just put consider 457 over pension, but we can, whatever.
I mean, those are the words I would have.
Do you want them to understand a little bit about the reasoning behind it?
Well,
the
that was,
equity and-
we're right on the same wavelength, but put that in the motion, but a reason for it is that it makes it open to everyone. It's a proven program. And it can be adjusted based on things such as hazard in the workplace. So that's my motion.
Mr. Gann, that was your motion?
Yes.
yep, I'll second it.
Mr. Norris seconds.
Yep.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
I,
Any opposed? The motion passes.
I will tell you, get some pushback on this, but these are the same things that we brought up about it being more fiscally conservative, that it's established, that it's easier for us, because right now with the pension, it's not there. It's like we're starting from scratch. It doesn't exist. What they want doesn't exist right now. And we're starting from scratch and it's becoming very costly.
well, I would say you have our back based on
Mhm.
this vote and it
All
goes
we can
back to
do
what
is
we-
advise, we
That's
can't.
correct. And, you know, they need to recognize
So-
the cost.
The one thing I'm gonna go back when I present this to the council with your recommendations is to show the effects on the budget going up or down. So with that recommendation on the 457, is there a particular point of a matching or a contribution to the police department, public works compared to the other departments?
Yeah, I think I built that in my reasoning. I think it's appropriate to have a higher match.
Yes. Is there a certain percentage that you guys were,
Oh,
that's what I was asking.
I would go with a universal matching for the beginning. And then evaluate that after so many years to see whether a various matching because of hazard. But I think
Okay.
at
So
the,
start as,
to start-
okay.
start out,
Mhm.
and, you know, flying with a universal,
Okay.
see what the cost is. And then move forward with hazardous levels.
In itself,
It's in.
yes.
I don't know if that needs to be a motion or an amendment.
You could go either way on that, make a secondary motion. It is kind of a separate topic.
Okay, because what I want to try to do is say, okay, if we did this, this is what would happen to the budget, overall budget. Instead of the pension, we do a matching. If we do a matching for the same for everybody, I'm just throwing out a number, 3%. That means it would be a 3% increase overall for here, but a decrease for the consulting fees, a 10%, that would be for the picked employees on the PD. And I did a 3% for the public works because it's a much lower amount. Actually, the study said to do 1%, but I didn't want to take that chance because the PD's at 10%. I did 3% for the public works employees when I did that budget. But
Also, the management will be handled outside, so you could emphasize the level of effort, because if you're managing a pension, that's going to need a lot more staff management on this end as opposed to a 457, which is
oh
already
yeah, well,
established.
Especially
thing-
since it's a one of a kind.
yeah, and we've already, I mean, I think we both said we are not experienced enough to handle a pension. Everything needs to be outsourced. I mean, I am not familiar, even with what the state takes care of everything. The auditors, I think it's GASB 68, does all the calculations for that. We don't have to do that. Now we're going to have to do all those things for this pension.
And it's gonna have to be outsourced for decades.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are gonna be able to retire in their 40s, live to 100, and the pension's gotta.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yeah. They don't know what they're getting into.
No. Yeah, we both try to explain it to them over and over.
I don't remember the cities, but I believe Detroit might have been one, and Chicago where
Mhm. Yeah, they can't, yep,
Yeah, I
nope.
mean, it's a real possibility.
Mm-hmm. And then also the uncertainty that this is long-term permanent. The uncertainty there, at least with the 457, hey, maybe we can do 5% this year but maybe 3 years, we might be in a financial strain and have to reduce it to 3%. At least we can make that change and then we can put it back to 5% when we get in a better position. Where the pension, we can't change that.
And
It's
the
just gonna
costs
go
of
up.
Running it are gonna go up and up and up.
Oh, yeah.
as well.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll get a good price for the first year because it's brand new, and then they'll realize exactly what it pays and it'll
Mhm.
double, and
Yep.
then it'll just incrementally increase after that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're at 418 and we didn't even get through the whole general fund
Well-
budget.
I'm sorry, could we get clarification on, was there a motion on the amounts?
There was no amount set. Did you want to make a recommendation for like 3%?
I don't
Or
think we should.
I
have that.
don't,
No.
Okay.
I definitely don't
I
have.
don't know if we have enough information to make that.
Yeah.
All right. Because it's going to be hard. I mean, I guess I can just put that in there. And I'll just have the numbers available if they ask for the cost. For each of those types of percentages.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So I
We-
think the 457 recommendation we've already established, right?
That's correct.
And so
No,
we're gonna keep it general.
Right.
With no specifics.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's fine. I will it's not hard to calculate what a 1, 2, 3, it's not hard to calculate that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea what their pension would cost, what they're looking for?
Well, we've got rough numbers of 100,000 to establish the plan, to create the plan, to write out the documents and everything. And that's just based on what the services that they said we would have to contract to get it done. And then 70,000 to maintain the plan year over year for somebody managing the investments, paying out the benefits. There was a whole list of different things that had to be done.
And would the police officers need to be contributing to that plan?
With what the council was asking to be done, no.
So that's gonna be part of the pushback, because if it's a 457, it's gonna be up to the police officer to contribute or not.
Mhm.
Of course, it could be set up in such a way they get a match, or they get a percentage, whether or not.
Yeah,
They
and
contribute.
that was another suggestion we brought up, like, I'm just throwing out numbers, maybe do a 3% automatic and then a 3% match.
Mhm.
So that the employee will automatically get 3% from the town. If they put in 3%, then they'll get another 3%. That means the 9% would go into their retirement.
Right.
Well, I think you're gonna
Something
have
like
to look at that because otherwise it's coming out of their pocket and that's not
Mhm.
what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the 457 also gives them the added benefit that they can put more in up to
Mhm.
whatever the
Oh, yeah.
maximum.
And the other thing that I brought up, it's 457 doesn't have age limit. So if they want to leave at 50, they still can have access to their funds. There is no age limit. It's just separation from your employer.
Yeah.
And then the 457 is meant for government entities because normally you retire earlier than a private entity.
And they can take it with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas a pension, they have to be vested, right? What if
Yes.
it's vested?
Well, this
And-
plan is looking at 10 years, yeah. Yep. Okay, so we didn't finish all of,
When's our next meeting?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
did you want to add one next week to finish up the general fund? Because I still have the enterprise funds for you guys too.
And when were you planning on those?
On the 27th, your next meeting.
Okay. You know, I have no, I do have a question.
Mhm.
I thought I recalled in the legislation for this committee that we didn't deal with the enterprise fund.
I actually went back and looked and I didn't see anything that's excluded them.
Okay, all right, I mean, I have no
I was
problem.
like, well, it doesn't say it excludes them, so I'm including them.
You're making the most of it.
Oh, okay. All right, so in other words, it refers to the general fund,
Yeah, it might refer to,
but
but
it doesn't.
it doesn't say anything about excluding the
Okay,
enterprise.
So I'm
So
not
I'm
totally
like-
off base then.
Yeah.
If it doesn't say it.
Okay, all right,
You didn't see it included, so she said it's not excluded.
right, that's exactly right. Okay, I'm no problem.
So that, I just feel like you guys should have, you're here to advise, make recommendations. It should be for the town as a whole, regardless of
Okay.
enterprise or general fund.
All right.
Can anybody else do the 20th,
Say that.
next Thursday to finish this?
Remind me again when your first visit to the council is.
March, hold on, I'm gonna give you exactly.
Soon.
March, hold on.
So
Oh.
with our regular schedule, are we on track or?
If we finished the general fund, I would say yes, but we didn't finish the general fund. So the, general fund actually goes to the council on both of them go to the council on March 11th for review and then discussion on the 18th for the general fund and the 25th for the enterprise funds.
March 11th is also.
Well, they get the budgets. We aren't discussing the budgets on March 11th. They just getting it.
And pensions.
So on this calendar, originally I was just gonna send you guys the budgets and say, okay, give me your recommendations, but I think it's better talking it out and talking through it. So if we can do the 20th and finish up the general fund and then do the 27th for the enterprise fund, and then I will put all your recommendations when I submit it to the council.
So I
can
personally could
do
not attend the 20th, but I'd be
Okay.
happy to provide commentary if we got the stuff ahead of time.
Okay. Well, the general fund's already there. That's what I sent you guys.
Just of portions that we didn't
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
deal with.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to review that and come with any questions or comments or recommendations, we can start from that point.
If you have a meeting, I can make it, but if, whatever.
Okay, did we want to schedule something for the 20th? To discuss?
It sounds like the majority of people could make it. I mean, I think if we have our questions in advance, I don't know that it needs to be 2 hours. But it sounds like it would be good to schedule it.
Okay, and that's fine because I just gave you guys this yesterday because I was finishing up the last pieces and adding the programs in there and the small caps. I had to change a few things.
So we have
I'm gonna
time
get,
to Look at less stuff. Because we've already looked at a lot of it.
and I will get you the enterprise funds, by the at least 5 days ahead of time, I'll
That'd
get you
be
the
great.
enterprise funds. I'll get you,
Yeah.
because I'm almost done with them. The one thing I need to do is calculate the rate and see the effects on what the expenses are compared to the rate, but I need to do analysis on how the town's growing, how many new accounts to kind of give an estimate of what amount can I assume that units are will be paying for these. So I got to do that. I didn't want to give you the expense without the revenue side on the enterprise funds. So I will have it to you by the 22nd of February, so that you have time to look at it. Okay, so did you guys want to schedule the 20th for 2 p.m.? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Boom. Can't see anything on there. Can't see that up there. It's like, oh.
Yeah, my neck hurts.
I know, I'm sure.
Today is my 2-year anniversary for the town.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.